Eat human.
Les humains à leur meilleur.
C'est tu apogeo.
ピーク人間
Welcome back, everyone. I'm working hard to make each episode very informative and get great guests that bring something unique to the table. I go for quality over quantity. I love having guests with new messages and insights that we haven't heard before, and Dr. Touro is one of these great sources of information. People have been requesting a weight loss journey, someone who's actually lost a ton of weight themselves. Not only did Dr. Touro lose 150 pounds, but he's a, you guessed it, doctor. He helps people figure out how to transform their body and health on a daily basis. This is real world application here, people. There are so many sides to this stuff, and the psychology behind eating, and more importantly, overeating, is huge. He knows a lot about what it means to be obese and make these changes and make them last. He was 350 pounds 3 years ago and has kept off the weight despite the usual statistics of 97% of people just putting it back on. This was no easy feat, and if you haven't seen a photo of him, he's actually pretty ripped. We start off with some social media controversy about a post I made that rubbed some people with food addiction the wrong way. The episode is about so much more than that, so keep listening, and I think there's huge value for anyone and everyone in this episode. Once again, I have to talk about the Food Lies film Indiegogo campaign. Basically, all podcasts have sponsors to pay the bills. My film is this sponsor. I've turned down other sponsors and could be making quite a bit based on the expanding audience of the show. I'd really rather not do this, so please support the film if you're enjoying the podcast and the lack of annoying ads. This film is my baby, and I spent an immeasurable amount of time and my own money on it. I know it'll all be worth it when it's completed, so please help me get there. Go to foodlies.org to click through to the Indiegogo campaign or click on the link in the show notes. Thanks so much, and here's Dr. Touro. Let's get this going. Dr. Touro, how are you doing today?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here. Very busy, but happy to check in with you.
Awesome. Yeah, we got tagged on Twitter. Apparently, I made an inflammatory remark about people not being able to stop eating. And there was an uproar on Twitter or Instagram, and been following what you've been doing. So I think it was a great opportunity to have us talk about food addiction, satiety, psychological issues, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'll be happy to talk about it. I think maybe for your listeners, the context of us getting put together was you noticed, I guess, somebody, or what happened? Why don't you start with what happened? And maybe I can kind of chime in. I can chime in on the science and clinical side.
Yeah. I just made a post. You know, my roommate's parents came to town over Christmas, and they left all this packaged junk and sugar carb stuff. And I was like, hey, this is trash. This is what happens when I leave my house unattended. I said, well, maybe if you eat the right foods, if you eat a satisfying meal of protein and fat and whole foods, you're not going to be hungry. You're not going to be snacking. You're not going to be like a kid at a birthday party, just constantly stuffing your mouth with trash. And I guess I made it sound like it was kind of easy, and that I don't even know what I said. Sometimes I just write stuff on social media and then people take it the wrong way. I was trying to be motivational. I'll say that is that I wanted to say, hey, just stop being a kid. You're not a kid, right? You don't need to be constantly pleased, have awesome food that's yummy in your mouth, right? So some people took that the wrong way. Some people who are overweight, and they're like, hey, I have a problem. It's not just as easy as you're making it seem.
Yeah. What's funny is when you wrote that, immediately I kind of thought about personal experiences of mine in my past. I've shared this before on my podcast and elsewhere about food addiction. And food addiction for the kind of the listener is something that's hotly contested. So some researchers would say it's a phenomenon that doesn't exist, and other people like Lustig have written about it in his book, Hacking the American Mind. And it's been talked about. And, so with regards to food addiction, one of the things that I personally experienced, and people know this, is I've said, my wife used to literally hide the cereal from me. She used to literally go and take the boxes of ice cream, and she would hide them in the basement refrigerator all the way in the back. And so when you talk about food addiction and being a kid and kind of, I can understand how people would feel kind of very passionate about it, especially if you recognize that you may have food addiction or, you may have this problem with binge eating. So I can see how people can be, it's a personal topic. So can you maybe talk about like, what did you mean to say more and maybe how you think it was taken? So, it sounds like you were trying to encourage people that it's not something that's hard to do.
Well,
how do you think it was taken?
I think some people these days, I don't like this sort of, it's all about me. Everything's about me these days. And so I think some people just take things the wrong way where, hey, it's just a social media post. But what I was trying to say is I've never fat shamed anyone before. That's not what I do. And I want it to be motivational. I want people to see my posts and then think about it next time they go to the grocery store and choose what to buy, right? Or what they're going to eat at that moment. Be like, no, I'm not a kid. I don't need to do this, right? I don't need to eat this right now. And also what I wrote is that if you're eating the right food, so you have the choice to what you buy. And if you're full, kind of my point is if you just eat a big steak, try snacking an hour later. Well, see, I should probably not even say that because I have my own food addiction, right? Maybe people have different food addictions, but I've come to realize that once I start eating, I can't stop. So I know what it's like. That's why I found this way of eating that works for me is that I can eat as much as I want and have 2 giant meals and still lose weight or be fit because I know that once I start, I'm not going to stop. But this is what works. So yeah, I do have my own problems and I've sort of figured them out. But I think I'm maybe thinking that everyone can figure it out so easily, which is my problem.
Well, so coming back to my, so here I am, I'm a clinician and I'm a physician. I'm trained to help people. And here I am at 350 pounds. My wife's hiding cereal boxes from me, hiding, ice cream bars from me. I mean, it's so bad where like if I saw, chocolate at work, I mean, I would just eat it and really not, it wouldn't even be a second thought. It would be like, I kind of know I shouldn't have this, but I'm starving and I need to eat something. So, and then all of a sudden the whole box of chocolate's gone and you're left thinking like, how did this just happen? Like, how is it that I'm so hungry? And so from my perspective, being a clinician and seeing myself 350 pounds, I started to ask myself, like, what is wrong with my appetite? Am I depressed? Is there some psychological issue underneath this? Did I have some trauma as a kid that and everybody who knows me knows I'm like an outgoing, happy guy. Nobody who knows me would ever say I'm depressed and I'm not. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I was so lost and so bewildered by why I was so hungry. And I was literally considering being the most extroverted person and happy person in the world. Like, am I underneath this all depressed? Which I wasn't. But that's how desperate I was to answer the question, why am I always hungry? And so, it was really difficult for me, even as like all this education I've gone through, undergraduate sciences and medical school, residency. And here I am, I can't even figure my own self out. So when patients come to me and they're wildly overweight, 400 pounds, 500 pounds, 250 pounds, whatever it is, I totally sympathize with them and empathize with them because I know that, I'm no different and I wasn't any different. And to be honest, I think most, and this, and everybody in the low carb health and wellness and fitness community knows this, that, all of America is really suffering with a lot of these problems. And it's not easy for a lot of people to know what's wrong with them. So I guess like that's the first kind of comment I would make is, now, yeah, look at me. I'm, I have a 6-pack. I ran a 5K in, 19 minutes, which is a top 1 percentile run for performance. Mm-hmm. I scored first in my age group in that race. And this was fasted without carbs. I mean, imagine explaining this to a 350 pound me. There would be no way I would comprehend. I mean, I couldn't even comprehend why I didn't finish the box of ice cream,
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny when you say, don't be like a child. You don't need to be like constantly elated. I was literally in that place,
Mm-hmm.
and I had no clue. I had no clue why. So I totally get your, like the way you want to inspire people, like, hey, wake up. This is easy.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I can see how people could be like, wildly offended because they probably have no idea.
Well,
they really probably have no idea.
No, you're totally right. And I want to talk about how people get obese in the first place. But I also was doing it under the context of this is people who follow my account. They should know every day I post about, eating the correct foods, nutrient density, protein, fat, all this stuff is how you will be full. So I guess if you know what you should be eating, then we'll talk about more about how you figured out satiety and how you figured out how people get fat in the first place. Because I think it is crazy that a lot of people have no idea. They just end up and they just think this is how I am because it just happens so easily or naturally, or it's in their family.
Well, let me tell you, it's interesting that you say this is how I am because, this is how I was for 33 years. And this is how my brother was wildly overweight, 450 pounds. My older brother, my younger brother, also similar weight. My father, overweight. My mother, overweight. So I grew up thinking that, it's genetic. And then I went to medical school. Oh, it is genetic. There's multiple genes associated with diabetes and obesity. So, I was convinced that I was predisposed to this. This is my parents. This is me. And lo and behold, now my older brother's lost 150 pounds. I've lost 155 pounds. My younger brother's lost 50 pounds off to, diabetes medications. My mother's off 2 diabetes medications. My father lost 30 pounds. So yeah, this is definitely not you in the majority of cases. This is definitely not your genetics in the majority of cases. And even in cases like Prader-Willi, where it is a genetic dysfunction of a hormonal imbalance, you lack a hormone, there's still ways to help you. So even if it is genes, you can still, you could outsmart this. Mm-hmm. So yeah, 100% I agree with you. It's a little bit about figuring it out. I'm going to take one little quick segue if you're okay.
Definitely.
Because I think there is an easy answer for many, and then there's respecting obesity. Respecting obesity in the sense that I think I can help probably like 70% of people that's come to me. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then there's 30% of people either who are not ready, right? Can't make the changes needed, or they themselves, we can't quite figure out what the cause is, right? Mm-hmm. So obesity is a very complex issue. And I'll give you one example. In my practice, there's about a 75% rate of childhood trauma that corresponds with chronic disease. And this is consistent with chronic disease in general. If you take people with chronic disease and you give them an ACE questionnaire, either in their childhood, they had physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, depression, divorce, suicide, stuff like that in childhood. Now, what does this mean? I don't really know. I don't know how to tackle that, but it's an incredible coincidence that 70% of chronic disease has an ACE positive questionnaire. Mm-hmm. That's just one example of how complex this can be. I've had patients who, overate because of childhood sexual trauma. I've had patients who've overate from severe depression. I have people who overeat from general anxiety. So you have to respect the fact that obesity is a complex issue. There's thyroid issues, there's endocrine issues, hormonal issues, cortisol, Addison's sometimes early on can cause hyperphagia. Addison's is a disease of, lacking certain hormones. Mm-hmm. Hypercortisolism, another, Cushing syndrome can cause obesity, thyroid. I mean, there's a number of hormonal issues and medical issues and psychological issues. So obesity is complex. But at the end of the day, right, I'm going to stop blabbering on here. At the end of the day, I think the majority of people can be helped with exactly what you said, which is a nutrient-dense, high-protein, high-fat style of eating when it comes to weight loss, appetite, and when it comes to satiety. So I absolutely 100% agree with you. That's this framework.
Oh, lost you for a second. Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the large part, most people who come to me, even with binge eating, even with depression, even with these kind of other issues, they suffer from our modern food environment, which lacks protein, which lacks healthy fats, and which is filled with sugar and processed carbs. And you cannot get full off of sugar and processed carbs. You will endlessly eat, the cereal and the candy bars and the chocolate bars and the ice cream and whatever it is that your roommate's parents left over at your house. You cannot get full off of that. And so people who expect to be full off of that or think that they're abnormal because they're not full off of that, Well, let me tell you something. Pretty much 60 to 70% of the United States has your problem of not being full with these processed foods and these processed carbs and these sugars and these foods made with inflammatory oils. So this is not a unique thing. You're not defective. You're not genetically predisposed. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's kind of easy. Just start eating real food and watch the magic happen. And for most people, that's enough to really get weight loss started. And then it takes some coaching afterwards. And you know about this because you're involved with coaching, but it just takes coaching after that to kind of make some tweaks and keep them going. Yeah.
Well, do people even know that this is happening, that they're eating too much, I think there's a large portion of people that they just think this is how I eat. They don't even think about it. And they don't even know that they're eating way too many calories. And they're like, hey, I'm just eating these rice crackers. They're supposed to be healthy. Why am I fat?
I think most people who are eating rice crackers, this is what happens. They probably eat rice crackers and do great. They had 5 or 10 and it's only whatever, like 250 calories or nothing. And then 3 hours later, they find themselves really hungry and they go eat something because they're still hungry because they really didn't eat anything with nutrient density. And they eat something and they don't remember it. And then they go back an hour later and eat something and they don't remember it. And they're not remembering it because it didn't make them full. And they want more because their body is lacking real nutrients. So I think most people are generally unaware of how much they eat. Even when you ask like nutritionists and doctors to recount what they ate, there's like a 20% variation between what they actually ate and what they say they ate. Mm-hmm. So imagine even like the best dietitian or nutritionist doesn't know 1/5 of what they're eating. So imagine what you are as like an untrained kind of layman, like, average everyday person. Probably like at least you're eating 30 to 50% more than what you think, or you're not remembering exactly 30 to 50% of what you're eating. So yeah, I think most people are like woefully unaware. And then you have people like Jillian Michaels who say like everything in moderation. And, you have these nutritionists who say it's okay to have Twinkies and Pop-Tarts. And then you think, oh, must be okay for me to have this. I should want to try to eat this and moderate how much I'm eating because that's the dietary BS that has been told to us for a long time. So, in fact, you had, Lane Norton, who you had on a couple episodes ago, who advocates the Pop-Tart diet and if it fits your macros, which I think lacks evidence in the medical literature. So, yeah, I think most people have no idea why they're hungry and they don't know why they're eating so much and they can't figure it out. I mean, I couldn't. Most people that come to my practice can't.
We're not even connecting it. I don't think, now since we studied this stuff, you understand that satiety is the heart of all of this, right? And you got to do whatever you can to be full. But some people haven't even made the connection of different foods provide different satiety and that this is what I should be focusing on and stuff like that. Like even with drinking calories, I don't know why this isn't a bigger deal in the world. Drinking a soda or juice provides basically zero satiety, but hundreds of calories. Number one thing we should be talking about is never drink calories.
Yeah, liquid. So when somebody comes to me with a weight loss stall, I'll always kind of go back to the drawing board and liquid calories is up there for low hanging fruit to eliminate. I mean, just in all forms, I think liquid calories are something that's easy to remove. And sometimes people don't realize how much cream they're putting into coffee and how much butter they're putting into their coffee or, whatever, even if it's like a little bit of cream or a little bit of sugar, they just don't consider that, but they add up. You've had 3 cups of coffee or 4 cups of coffee or 3 cups of tea. So I think that's definitely, even if you think you're being good and having tea and coffee, you can still be getting in hidden kind of energy that you just don't need. So yeah, and juice, I have 3 kids in my house, 2, 4, and 6, and there's no juice in our house. I don't remember the last time they got juice. They don't need juice, So
that's a big lie that we've been told.
Yeah, that's a big
It's so healthy.
Fruit juice, 100% fruit juice. Like I don't care. Like that's a big scam, made with real fruit juice, that's another big scam. So if you see something like that on packaging, just know to avoid it.
Yeah. So people get obese in different ways, right? Some of it is they lack the information. Some of it is just in their environment, their family. There's so many ways that people got there, right? So I guess there's so many ways to get them out.
Yeah. Look, there's no one way works. I mean, that's obvious, right? If how you get a calorie deficit and how you get an energy deficit, I think is important. But ultimately, look, bodybuilders are able to put on weight and take off weight, fairly easily, and they're able to plan it out. There's people who count calories and it works for them. I just find that most people, they have access to calories. It's listed on all the foods.
Everywhere. It's on the menus now. The
exactly. You have MyFitnessPal. I mean, we don't have a MyFitnessPal deficiency. I don't think it's a calorie counting problem. And even if you do count and keep a food diary, even the best of us are going to omit 20% of it. So I don't think that that's really a great way to tackle obesity. And look, if it was, honestly, most people know, count your calories and reduce them, right? So why isn't, the obesity epidemic solved?
That's what I was telling Lane. Well, it's like, I hate his approach. I was maybe too nice to him, or I didn't. But yeah, I think you agree that his approach is bad. And he's working with bodybuilders that are very disciplined and enjoy counting calories.
Yeah, look, for obesity and for weight loss, for people who are wildly overweight, it's definitely about hunger. I'm not saying you can't count calories and win and be a star. You can do that. But if you don't, if you have that kind of willpower and that kind of determination, then great, go ahead, but you are a rarity. You are less than 20% of the United States who's metabolically healthy and can do that. I think, one of the other problems is our bodies don't have a calorie receptor. They don't have a energy. They don't have like a part of us that feedbacks, oh, you got enough energy, you're fine. We have fat reservoirs. We have energy reservoirs. There are fat cells. They're made to soak up energy. Well, what are those feedback mechanisms that tell your body to stop eating? And how can we leverage them? I mean, this is what I educate people on. What are those mechanisms that will make you full? And how can we leverage it so you're not going to Brian's house and, leaving a bunch of processed food and him getting upset that you're eating everything? How do you do that? That's what I try to help people understand. And
let's go into it.
Yeah, there's 5 or 6 studies. I mean, the first thing I talk to people about is the fact that glycemia shifts. So if your blood sugar shifts greatly, meaning it spikes up and spikes down, you are going to be hungry. And how do I know this? Well, a bunch of researchers in Yale in 2011 did a study where they literally took insulin and infused it in people and measured what happens in a functional MRI. They looked at what parts of the brain light up. And if you give a massive dose of insulin and you keep the sugar constant, lo and behold, there's not a lot of, reward centers lighting up. You're not thinking about Lucky Charms and, cereal and ice cream and cookies and pizza. So what happens if we give you a ton of insulin, which is the problem in most of America, hyperinsulinemia, which is the, part of metabolic syndrome, which 80% of the United States has. Well, what happens when we give you a ton of insulin and we let your blood sugar fluctuate? All of a sudden, the parts of your brain that want pizza and cookies and Pop-Tarts and Lucky Charms go through the roof. They start actively lighting up. You're dreaming about Lucky Charms when your blood sugar fluctuates. And this has been shown on functional MRI. And it's even worse when you're obese than when you're a normal weight. It's meaning that the people that Lane sees or Lane Norton sees and the bodybuilders who are insulin sensitive and their sugars are stable, they're not dreaming of Pop-Tarts when their sugars have some shifts. But when somebody who's obese has those type of shifts, they're already dreaming about, Lucky Charms. So if you eat Lucky Charms and your blood sugar spikes and comes back down, you're already dreaming about Lucky Charms. Those parts of your brain are lighting up. Okay. So the first thing I try to do is fix people's glycemia. And the best way to do that quickly, and there's 2 ways to do that quickly. One is a very low calorie diet, which is just very hard for people to do. And I find it's largely ineffective. Another way is a whole food plant-based diet that could fix glycemia. But again, I think it's unnecessary and kind of only for people who have those moral and kind of ethical convictions, right?
It's harder to stick to, it seems like. And yeah, it's just people who are naturally inclined to that and who enjoy those foods. And hey, yeah, do it. But most people don't.
Correct. And then, the kind of approach, I use those approaches if patients want that type of style approach and it may work for them if they've done it in the past, or I don't think it's going to be detrimental. or for whatever reason, but majority of my patients will go on a very low carb ketogenic diet. And that's an immediate way to fix that glycemia. So those fluctuations in blood sugar, those kind of disappear. So that's the first step I like to do, is fix the blood sugar, right? Or eliminate the processed carbs, eliminate the sugars and the processed carbohydrates. And so, well, what happens next? Well, if you look at neurohormones that promote satiety, like neuropeptide YY, if you look at CCK, this is a hormone, I've talked about this on other podcasts, they're specifically preserved in low carbohydrate diets that are high in protein and high in fats. So, this gives further evidence that, okay, if we put somebody on a low fat diet, we may be able to control their glycemia if they're calories restricted. We may be able to stabilize that blood sugar. I'm going to kind of translate here. And they may not be dreaming of Lucky Charms on that functional MRI. But over time, they're going to lose some of these hormones that promote satiety. And lo and behold, we have research that shows if they go long-term on a low carbohydrate diet, that their neuropeptide YY is preserved and that their CCK is preserved. So what does this mean? When I take this neurohormones and I inject them in you, Brian, or your roommate before he goes to a Chinese buffet, he's going to eat like 25 to 50% less with these hormones than he would if he didn't have them. And we know that a low-fat diet just kills these hormones. It knocks CCK way down and knocks neuropeptide YY down. So as you lose weight on these diets, you are fighting a harder and harder battle with satiety, which means your body's going to want to go back to some quote unquote set point. Well, the best way to fight. Fail. Yeah, the best. That's one of the reasons why they fail is people get hungry and their body wants to go back, right? Their body wants to go back. But so if you want to leverage these hormones, the best way to do that is within a high protein, high healthy fat kind of paradigm. And then the last reason is once you're ketotic, you are not beholden to food for energy, right? Once you are able to, you're fat adapted, making ketones, your body is not relying on, you have fat to burn. You're not beholden to food for energy. At that point, you are only eating food for micronutrients and for whatever reason you've convinced yourself you need to eat. So, yeah, correct. There's multiple reasons. Look, we all have lives, we all have hunger, but once you're in ketosis, you're not really eating for energy. So you're eating for micronutrients, or you're eating for, some protein, or you could argue, or you're eating for whatever else, habit, boredom, whatever other reason, I'm not condoning fasting or condoning starving yourself, but realize that you're no longer, once you're ketotic, you're no longer beholden to energy. You have fat to burn, your body has energy, and you're fat adapted, your body has energy. So
you're like starving in a concentration camp, you have so much energy to burn in your body. And yeah, I like to tell people, are you actually hungry? There's many other reasons why you think you're hungry. And unless you truly are starving and haven't eaten in 5 days, you're probably not hungry, right? If you're fat adapted, because you have all this energy to burn, and mainly it's just habit or other things.
Yeah, it's hard to understand that because you will feel hunger. If you put cookies in front of me right now, I will be hungry, even though I don't have them in front of me. I'm sitting on my coffee and I'm not hungry. So what do we mean by hunger? Do we mean like brain hunger? Literally when you think of food, already insulin is spiking, already your blood glucose is shifting. So you can cause hunger just by thinking of food. Your mouth is salivating. Like I just started salivating thinking of these cookies, right? Yeah. So you can be hungry, right? So the question is what you do about those hunger pangs often, right? How do you go about managing them? Because you can physiologically make yourself hungry. Let me give you another example. So have you ever taken steroids like a prednisone or Medrol pack for like a sinus infection or lung infection or asthma? Have you ever done that?
I don't think so. I try to avoid, maybe a long time ago. I don't really take any antibiotics.
Yeah, I don't like taking them either. I agree. But, very often people have either had, some steroids for an allergy or poison ivy or an autoimmune disease or asthma or cold or whatever. They've gotten a steroid pack. And anybody who's taken steroids like prednisone or Medrol or one of these medications, they'll tell you the main side effect. And the main side effect there is weight gain, right? And massive shifts in blood sugar. So any diabetic you talk to who's taken prednisone will tell you it makes their sugar go crazy. Well, why is that? You may know this and you probably know this. It's due to cortisol. Cortisol makes you less insulin sensitive and it makes you hungry. And so the two main side effects people get from these steroids is hunger and blood sugar out of control, right? And so, well, what do you think happens to people under stress? If I take you, I mean, we've done this in lab rats. We take lab rats, we sleep deprive them, we shock them. What happens to them when we feed them? They eat more and they get more fat, right? So because they have a ton of more cortisol, a ton of more stress hormones. So what happens to people when we go and we take them and we make them stressed out and we sleep deprive them? I tell them to think back to those times where they took prednisone. What happened then? Oh, I gained weight. My blood sugar was out of control. Well, what do you think's going on now? So stress and hormones play a deep role in kind of appetite regulation and, what makes you hungry and truly hungry. And if you take somebody and you make them stressed, they will have true hunger. Okay, they will have true hunger. Their blood sugar will go down. They're less insulin sensitive, will go up, and they're less insulin sensitive, and they will be really hungry. So you have to educate, and I spend a lot of time educating people on these paradigms so they understand how to manage it, and what to do about it when those times come. You can't get rid of stress. Sometimes you can't sleep more. So it's figuring out what to do in those times and knowing that these are normal responses. You're normal if you're under stress and you feel hungry. Everybody gets more hungry under stressful situations. So a lot of this is educating people and getting them aware of these factors. I mean, I'm sure you run into that.
Yeah,
right?
No, this is great. Yeah, this is all right on. And half the battle is having people recognize what it is and being mindful of it, right? Instead of just going on autopilot like they were before. So there's a huge education component or even giving them tools of, well, so say you think you're hungry. Well, are you just bored? Like maybe are you just bumming around your house and you're just opening the fridge just because you're bored? And it's like, okay, well, what can you do? And it's like, well, do you want to go on a walk? Do you want to occupy yourself in another way? Because then that hunger could pass.
Yeah, a lot of times it'll be people who are either at work, right? And they just got out of a stressful meeting and they're sitting at their desk and they'll start, eating something. They'll go for that scone or they'll go for the, Starbucks treat or something like that. Or they did so good all day and the stress mounted and they get home and they just want to unwind and kind of treat themselves and they'll go and they'll eat the whole fridge. And that's kind of another way of doing it. Or like you said, they're just sitting at home doing nothing and kind of relaxing and watching TV. And then they're like, oh, maybe I should eat something because they've been doing that for the last 20 years. So there's habits that have to be addressed. There's, kind of emotional, psychological issues that have to be addressed. Ultimately, if you can get somebody to in that low carb paradigm, fat adapted, eating proteins and fats, I try to, in the beginning, encourage them actually to eat safe foods when they find themselves bored. Because I have a belief that if they're eating that safe food, later on, they're not going to be hungry. So later on, they'll be full. And it'll be like if you're on a stressful meeting and you're hungry, just go eat, go eat a steak, go eat eggs, go eat chicken, go eat, nuts, whatever it takes for you at that moment that prevents you from going to the donut and the scone and the spaghetti. And this way, at least, you'll be full 5 hours later and you won't be, crashing and binging 5 hours later. So in the beginning, I try to tell people to kind of reset and just not deprive themselves and just eat. As time goes on, I find when the hormonal situation and blood sugar situation is all under control, then they're more empowered to flex their willpower. Like months later, they're more empowered to kind of drink water and get through the hunger pang and just notice it and go for a walk. But early on, I don't think it makes any sense to tell somebody to go for that walk. It's just, just go eat a steak and call it a day and don't pay attention to the scale. Get yourself fat adapted, get yourself, in this kind of low carb state, get yourself appetite regulated, and we'll worry about the weight loss later. So I don't know if you use that approach or...
Well, I like that. I know that you don't advocate for counting calories or tracking all that stuff, especially in the beginning. And you don't even bring up exercise in the beginning until people bring it up. So both of those, I think, is huge, is that transition and building habits, and then that other stuff comes later.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll go into fasting with people, and I generally won't talk about fasting for months, until they tell me, hey, you know what, I'm really not that hungry. And then, coaching fasting is a whole nother side of things. It's leveraging the fact that your body's fat adapted and you're able to use fats for energy. You're not beholden to food for energy. And then that's after a couple months. I like to start that a couple months in. There's some cases where I'll start it right away, but And when that time comes, it's all about coaching, like drink another coffee, drink another tea, have some bone broth. And I find that, or go outside and do something, whatever it takes, to kind of get them through. So yeah, I think it depends on where people are, in terms of that boredom factor. Early on, it'll be, no, don't even like try to fight it, Later on, it's, yeah, you can do it.
Yeah, I think, okay, so this is also kind of going back to my original point, is if you're eating the right foods, like you said, even if you are snacking too much or eating too many calories without even knowing it, but at least you're eating the right things, you're going to be heading in the right direction. You're changing your body chemistry. You're changing a lot of things. So yeah, eventually it'll work. And it is pretty hard to snack when you just eat a big steak or you just had a bunch of ground beef or eggs. Food doesn't look appetizing to you. Like, that's just what I do. That's my strategy. I eat until food isn't appetizing for 8 hours and I don't think about food. It's great. I focus on work and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I guess I am hungry.
Well, let me tell you some personal little tidbits that may make you kind of appreciate. So the one thing, have you ever been, I know a little bit about your story, but have you ever been obese? Have you ever been like wildly obese? No, not at all. So if we compared our stomach sizes, I'm sure my stomach size is probably at least 50% larger than yours, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the, and a lot of people who come to me have binge eating and who probably have enlarged stomachs, and that's why, not that I'm advocating sleeves. Sleeves are very effective in some patients.
Gastric sleeve, yeah.
Yeah, gastric sleeves. So we're talking about bariatric surgery. And why are they effective, right? So leveraging that kind of post-meal satiety is a different story for the massive. Look, 90% of people will absolutely be helped by what you're saying. There'll be about 10 to 20% of people, and this is true in my practice, that have insatiable appetites, who can eat 3 pounds of beef. And I happen to be one of those. I could sit there and I can eat I can out eat my satiety hormones. I can do that. I don't have that stretch receptor. I don't have that. And the ways I can do that is by making food palatable. So the example I give people is, and who talks about this? Cyan Foley. Hope I'm pronouncing his name wrong. Yeah, Kian. Sorry, Kian.
I'm about to talk to him.
Yeah. So I Wellboy. So it's funny, we know people based on their Twitter names, but Kian,
at Wellboy, yeah,
Wellboy. So he talks about combining carbs and fat a lot. And let me tell you, if you want to override your sense of satiety, the best way to do that is take a protein source and add fat or carbs to it. I'm going to give you an example. So if I can probably eat 1 to 2 pounds of chicken, right? 1 to 2 pounds in a sitting, and I'll be full probably the whole day if I eat that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now I can probably eat 1 to 2 pounds more if I add barbecue sauce, honey mustard, or hot sauce to it. So if I add, or if I salt it even, that sometimes can do it. So if I add carbs, which is what basically ketchup, honey mustard, and barbecue sauce, these things are, I can wildly overeat. I'll give you another example. It doesn't even have to be a carb. I talked about this on other podcasts, but I've done an experiment where I fast and then I eat as much Greek yogurt as I can. And I'm able to eat 1 tub of Greek yogurt if I fast all day and kind of go and eat that as a meal. If I add Splenda to it, I can eat 2 tubs and still be hungry. If I add berries to it, I can eat 2 tubs and still be hungry. So if you take a protein source and you add carbohydrates or sugar or palatability, let me give you another example. Right? If I give you, Brian, a pound of shrimp, okay? You think you could finish a pound of shrimp?
Probably.
Okay, 2 pounds? Probably not, right? Okay, 1 pound, yeah. If I give you 2 pounds of shrimp and I give you butter sauce, you think you could finish 2 pounds of shrimp?
I mean, yeah.
Probably, right?
Yeah.
What about probably the same with marinara sauce. Probably the same with marinara sauce too, right? If I gave you marinara sauce, you probably could kill 2 pounds, but versus the plain shrimp, right? Yeah. Here's another example.
At the ends. If I ate the full plain shrimp and then you offer it to me with the sauce, it like kicks it into a new gear.
Exactly. Absolutely. Well, here's another example. Have you ever had macadamia nuts?
Yeah.
Have you ever had unsalted macadamia nuts?
No.
Oh man, they taste like crap. So if you want to see, or you know what? So this is what people do. What about almonds? Do you have almonds?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever had unsalted? Do you have unsalted?
Yeah, I probably had like 3 of them.
3, yeah, exactly. Right. So if you salt, so if you just add salt, that's sometimes that palatability is enough to drive more eating. So when you're dealing with somebody who has a potential unlimited appetite, you have to take into account that there's other things you're going to have to do to promote satiety and limit hunger. And one of those is, realizing that the palatability of food is going to drive appetite. And, another example is like Diet Coke. For some people, it's totally fine. It's fine for them. They drink a little Diet Coke. They satisfy that sweet tooth. For me, if you give me like even a flavored seltzer, like that drives me nuts. Like it makes I can have like 5 flavored seltzers. If you give me like an icy drink or, LaCroix, I mean, they're putting something in that, and it drives my appetite. Mm-hmm. So for people who have kind of a limitless appetite and those stretch receptors are gone, who've had lifelong obesity, that stomach is enlarged and they just lack that fullness. Palatability and hyperpalatability and taste profile is something you really have to pay close attention to, because you can easily outdo that protein fat signal to eat less. And the other thing, I tell, sometimes I'm not huge on like fiber and roughage, and, I don't tell people necessarily to eat more of it. But the one role that I see that it's useful from a satiety perspective is it can fill somebody's stomach. So let's say you're fat adapted, you're ketogenic, and you're one of these morbidly obese, just like me, who lost weight, but their stomachs are still huge. The appetite is still huge. Well, you can eat a pound of steak and then eat a head of lettuce and your stomach's full and you just don't want to eat more. Or you could eat 2 pounds of steak or 3 pounds of steak. And so sometimes I'll tell people to consider eating plenty of roughage, just kind of an extra volume, or I'll tell them to drink like a large amount of water, or, post-meal, eat, pause, eat, where you at least just pause and kind of drink coffee or drink tea and drink some water and then reassess your hunger. I'll use these modalities because I'm leveraging the fact that their stomachs are so much larger and they're just going to need more volume. And to fill it with a volume of calorically dense food may not be in their best interest if weight loss is the goal, right? If weight loss is the goal. Yeah. So I don't know if these are kind of complex, like little nuanced points, but I don't know if they're coming across like
no, this is
clearly.
Perfect. No, this is great. And I try to tell people there's different types of satiety. Yeah, there's protein, there's so many benefits. I say focus on protein, definitely. If that's not already obvious to everyone, it has a higher thermogenic effect. It's satiating. There's all these good things about protein. But also the other side of satiety is, yes, just fullness, like just getting your stomach to feel full, and eating like a low carb, low sugar vegetable is a perfect way to do that.
Yeah. So I got a lot of... I got a lot of the carnivore crowd came after me when I said this, that, fiber can have a very beneficial role in a ketogenic diet, particularly from a satiety perspective. But look, I see this clinically, and I'm not, telling everybody to go eat lectins and, poison themselves. It's just how the carnivore community views it. But
go overboard, but yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm carnivore most days, so I'm one of you guys. But I really got the carnivore hate when I said fiber could be absolutely critical part of a satiety diet. So, but anyway, this is the paradigm I use to help people. And if I wasn't a clinician, I wouldn't know this stuff. If I was a layperson, I wouldn't know this stuff. My brother didn't know this stuff. I mean, he's now lost 150 pounds. My other brother didn't know this stuff. He's lost 50 pounds. None of my doctors knew it. My nutritionist doesn't know it. So I empathize with people, man. Those people that saw that tweet and got offended, I know you didn't mean it that way. And I empathize with all of them because I know what they're coming through, man. They've been told that they've been given garbage advice and it's never worked, and they're at the point where they think that it's their fault, so I get the sentiment. Like
well, that's kind of the whole point of this film. My big theory is people just been given the wrong information. It's as simple as that. Like, we've been given the wrong information for, about 50 years. And the road to recovery is give people the right information. This is 90 minutes of here's the correct way to think about things. Now you're armed with the correct information and you can start making some changes. And there's lots of different ways to do it. And that's why, yes, I understand. I'm mostly carnivore too, but there's other ways to do it. Like, I don't like when the carnivore crowd thinks there's only one way to do it. It's like fiber is poison for everyone. Like, no, we got fiber wrong. I think we thought that it was way more necessary, and it's not. But yeah, there's just many ways to do things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a one look. Like, clearly some people have, I have a good colleague of mine, Joseph Feuerstein, an integrative doc in the Connecticut area. He came out with an excellent article and wrote about this in a nutritional journal saying, and the title was magnificent. It was, everybody can't eat everything, right? Everybody can't eat everything. There's people who have allergies and insensitivities, and there's some diets that will work for some and not others. And so everybody can't eat everything. And this is even truer for like the conventional paradigm that, is advocating low fat. If one of my binge eaters who's massively obese goes to see a standard dietitian or nutritionist and is told to eat a low fat, portion controlled, diet, this is like a setup for failure, and it's a disaster waiting to happen. These people don't have satiety they're not going to feel full. They're not ever going to feel full if you portion control and, calorie count them. So this is a lot of nutrition, and a lot of, dietitians need to wake up, because satiety is not myplate.gov. It's just not. And so it'll never be myplate.gov. And so when they're preaching myplate.gov, they're just hurting people. And people have asked me why I'm so strongly about convention. It's because they never help me, and they won't help any of the people coming to me. And if you were helped by, the conventional approach, that's great. That's great. You're one of the few. You're one of the few. 60% of America is obese or overweight. 60% is pre-diabetic or diabetic. And this is what drives me, and that's why I'm passionate about it. So, as you can tell.
Well, yeah. And it's so crazy. They're just giving you a recipe for being hungry. It's like I've seen the Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig and all those. I've actually seen their programs. Like someone brought it to me so I could check it out. And it's a nightmare. You're not telling people how to be full. You're telling people how to be hungry. It's just the wackiest thing to do. And then you're just expecting them to run on willpower. But I have some questions for you. So I know you're opening up a clinic. You're doing online virtual telemedicine right now to help people lose weight and manage disease. Tell me more about that, because I'm kind of doing that too. I haven't really talked about it much on the podcast, but I'm here in LA with a partner with the doctor. And part of my mission is, making these films, podcasts, social media, trying to spread this information, but also put in practice. And we have a weight loss program that's kicking off at the end of the month. So yeah, tell me about yours, because you're ahead of me. You're doing it, and you're doing a great job, and we should, help each other out.
Yeah, look, there's so many. Look, it's funny. You have the Vertas, you have the IDM, you have my program, you have Heal Clinics, you have a lot of other doctors. Brian Lenskis, Eric Sodakoff, a lot of people kind of on the forefront, and there's so much obesity and diabetes to go around. So clearly we can all benefit each other, look like help each other, and everybody is going to do wildly successful. I have no doubt. So I'm happy to help. And my program is like literally listed on my website, and it's listed in detail what we do over 4 months. I've sent other physicians who are interested in starting the program or kind of making a program. I say, you can just go and copy what I do. I mean, it's literally listed right
That's
there.
Awesome.
Nothing is proprietary. So you go to, doctortro.com, which just spells out drtro.com, and you go to medical weight loss, and the 4-month program is kind of really spelled out for you there, what we do and how we do it. Yeah. So I've been doing, after kind of, losing so much weight, keeping it off, I could not go back to prescription pad medicine. I couldn't be a lemming doctor that just kind of prescribed statins and antibiotics and, called it a day. So about a year and a half ago, I decided that I was going to start offering help to people who needed it and for weight loss. And what I did was I had a non-compete with the hospital group that I left in my area. So I started just doing online consultations, and it just completely transformed. I mean, now I have biometric scales, blood pressure cuffs, heart rate monitors, ECG, remote ECG, continuous glucose monitors that I all monitor remotely. So I have like a panel of patients I'm literally looking at right now with 50 people's blood pressure and 40 people's continuous glucose monitors, and I track them weekly and I help them lose weight. I act as their physician and health coach. I transition them off of medications. And this has been over the past year and a half. It's just been phenomenal. I never thought that people would be comfortable with an online doctor, but it's just amazing that they are. And I'm so grateful that they have allowed me to participate in their care. And
Well, it's even more handy, really, and time effective.
Yeah, I mean, look, you don't have to preach it to me. It's time effective for me. It's time effective for them. They don't have to, get their makeup on and come into an office. They don't have to, I'm tracking them, and they don't have to share with me their blood pressure cuff and readings and track and any of this stuff. They don't have to finger prick. I mean, everything is just, you just step on a scale. It transmits through Wi-Fi. You use your blood pressure cuff. It transmits through Wi-Fi. The CGM is transmitting in real time. Your EKG is right on your chest strap if you have that issue, or right on your iWatch, and you just send it right to me. It's kind of awesome from a prevention and surveillance perspective. And think of the motivation. I mean, you're getting on your scale and you're like, I know my doctor is watching me and helping me. I mean, that is a potent motivator, I think, in and of itself.
It keeps you in check. You kind of need that. You're accountable.
Yeah, I think that
motivation and accountability. It's kind of both.
It's powerful. It's powerful, and I recognize that. So this is awesome, man. I love it. But now that my non-compete is ended with the hospital in the area, I can open a physical location, which is what I've wanted to do since I was 15. I want to serve my community. I want to be part of the health and wellness in my community. So I'm going to keep doing online, but I'm also going to be doing, primary care and weight loss with a brick and mortar presence. I never expected it to take off as much as it's did online. I thought maybe I'd get a couple of patients and, it would just be kind of like something on the side, but I'm booked out now more than 3 months. And it's just an amazing honor and pleasure. Now I need to get more of me. I was telling you before we went on the podcast, yeah. I need to get like 5 of me. I need to like clone myself. I'm going to be hiring health coaches soon. And so a lot of things that are great are coming up.
I love that. And yeah, I mean, going against the conventional medicine is so important. And that's why you have a 3-month waiting list, is because how important this stuff is and how wrong we've been for so long. So I love that. And I have some specific questions. So when you're dealing with these patients, because I've run into some of these problems, I've run into this stuff with friends. I mean, really just like friends, like not even patients. What about people who say they don't like meat, for example? Right?
Yeah.
I want to just go through a couple scenarios and see.
Yeah, sure. My wife doesn't like meat. I have a ton of patients who come to me, even vegetarian or vegan. So the first thing I did when I noticed I needed to be empathetic to people who just can't eat meat or don't want to eat meat or don't like meat. So the first thing I did was joined, vegetarian and vegan keto groups. I've done vegan and vegetarian keto kind of experiments myself to see how long I can do it. So I immersed myself. I've done whole food plant-based as well in the past. So I'm very familiar with it, but a well-constructed vegetarian or non-meat keto diet would include, it depends on if they eat fish and eggs and chicken and poultry. If they can eat fish, eggs, chicken, and poultry, it's a no-brainer.
You're good. Yeah.
You're good. But now the difficulty comes when somebody is truly vegan or, plant-based, and that becomes a little trickier. It's not impossible, but you're going to be eating foods like hemp hearts, and you're going to have a lot of tempeh and tofu and chia seed, a lot of seeds, a lot of nuts. It becomes a lot of different oils. It becomes it's a much more challenging diet, but it's definitely doable. So, the vegetarian or pescatarian is a layup. It's easy. Somebody who eats yogurt, cheese, eggs, it's super easy. But somebody who, you can make anything with almond flour and butter. You literally can make anything with almond flour and butter. It's a little more challenging when it's plant-based, but you can do it. It's not impossible.
Yeah. Do you think I have a theory, and it seems to always be women that don't like to eat beef. So many people, even close to me, my family, they're just like, I don't like beef. And I think it's because it's been ingrained in people's heads for so long that beef is bad for them, that they just think they don't like it. This is for men and women.
I think most people don't like beef because of some sort of residual cultural propaganda type of phenomenon. And you're right, I do see it more in women in my practice. I think a lot of chronic dieters are women, whereas men generally, I think society is harder on women with regards to weight and body image. So I think they've been forced to kind of adopt the paradigm more, the low fat paradigm more, because of the pressures and kind of unique kind of societal issues. I mean, that's just my idea. I don't know if that's true or evidence-based, but I'd say that, I just look at my pressures on my wife and my daughter and my mother, and I know that they have different pressures and more pressures. So yeah, I think I agree with you to some extent. I find women are more kind of ingrained in this low-fat thing, and it's probably even more of a problem for them.
Well, even beyond that, just this sort of anti-meat agenda for the past 50 years, I swear, I don't even know if I should be going down that rabbit hole of trying to tell people they maybe just don't like meat because they think it's bad and they can't get over that. And I don't even know, do you have to do a lot of work on letting people know that meat is not bad?
Yeah, I mean, I explain to them that, the new Pure study kind of exonerated meat to some extent. I talk to them about the fact that most population studies have been against meat, but I talk about kind of the reasons why maybe those are biased. So I try to present the data as unbiasedly as I can, and I try to give a pro and a con for each way of looking at it. And clearly, I'm eating meat, so, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Mm-hmm. I've transformed my health with meat. Yeah, there is some re-education that happens. I try to tell people to try it and give it a shot. I find that as they progress in the diet, they're more open to it. Like once you're fat adapted, I don't think you can resist beef. I mean, it's just so savory and amazing. But I don't push it either. Like my wife, I don't think she ever had a steak really until I kind of went on this diet. And now she doesn't love beef. She's not a huge beef eater like me, but she downed a tomahawk steak yesterday. So awesome. I think it's just exposure and kind of getting over the food lies. Getting over the food lies.
There's a plug. Awesome. So what about people who tried low carb or keto and they just claim like it didn't work, or they gained weight, or they felt bad doing it? Like I've heard all of these things.
You can definitely gain weight on a ketogenic diet. You can definitely gain weight. If you want to gain weight on a ketogenic diet, this is what you're going to do. You're going to take butter and add it to everything. Yeah. Okay. You're going to take a whole bunch of cheese and liquid dairy, and you're going to eat it and drink it. Okay. After you eat a meal, snack on a ton of nuts. All right. And every meal you make is going to have really fatty cuts of meat. And on top of that, you're going to add more butter and cheese to it.
And bacon.
And bacon. So, and look, some people can actually lose weight on a diet like that. Yeah. But I can tell you, and then you're going to drink alcohol, keto safe alcohol, on top of that. And so coming back to the liquid calories, right? No liquid calories if you want to. That's the low-hanging fruit. So yeah, I mean, I think that I've seen my top consult, my number 2 consult reason is I'm doing low carb and stalling or gaining weight. So yeah, I see that. People don't feel good on keto. Rarely hear that. It's the exact opposite. It's like, I never want to go back. I never want to go back. I never want to go back.
So the problem is, I have a good friend who claimed that I couldn't talk to him. It was just like the conversation's over. He's like, hey, I tried it. I just didn't feel good. I didn't want to say you did it wrong, but
yeah, they were probably in keto flu. They were probably in keto flu. It depends on how long they did it. They were probably, I coach people about the first 3 to 6 weeks and let them know that they're going to be I tell them beforehand, you will likely not feel good. Mm-hmm. You will likely feel lightheaded. You might get constipated. You may get cramps, especially if you don't drink water, especially if you don't add salt. You may need magnesium. You may need potassium. A lot of this is, and I'm sure because you've been doing it.
Absolutely.
When you're doing the coaching, that people just need to be, if they know what to expect, it's less of a surprise, and it's not, this is just, they understand it. Once they're coached, they understand it's their body adjusting, and they see that it gets better over time. For 1 month, I cursed the name of Sean Baker, when I was already low carb, and he's like, no, try 0 carb. And I was like, no, I feel terrible, man. And I felt terrible for a month until my wife gave me a huge, massive, fatty meal. And I was truly fat adapted and very low carb, that I kind of went into fat adaptation. So yeah, I mean, I think even me, I felt lousy for a month. And so, and I've talked about that with Sean, and I'm just joking around, so yeah, it could be not going low carb enough and not adapting. It could be they're stuck in keto flu and just the symptoms are so bad they stop. And it could be they're not managing the symptoms of keto flu.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I'm glad you brought up the point of people think that once you do keto, that fat is unlimited. And I love Ted Nyman, how he talks about this a lot, is it's not a free pass to eat fat. We're just saying fat is good. We're just saying fat can be healthy. If you're eating the right fats, it's good. That doesn't mean eat unlimited amounts of it. every amount of fat you're eating is fat that you're not burning, right? If you're eating in a surplus.
Yeah, look, ultimately, this is about the way I approach it is, you say surplus. The way I approach it is about appetite. It's about being full with less. And if you want to take a steak and you want to eat more steak, add butter to it. If you want to eat more chicken, add more butter to it. You want to eat more shrimp, add more butter to it. Actually, in fact, if you want to eat more of it, add butter and salt, and you'll eat a lot more too. In fact, if you want to add even a little bit more, make a cream sauce. Put a little bit of carbs, a little bit of dairy fat, and a little bit of dairy, some lactose with some butter, and add salt. And you're going to eat probably 2 or 3 times more than what you normally eat. So the way I approach it is not calories. It's what's driving your hunger, and it's kind of the way of saying the same thing in a framework that makes more sense. What's going to make you eat more? If it's going to make you eat more to douse your food in liquid dairy or butter or whatever, maybe it's not in line with your goals. So yeah, absolutely. But I think he calls them butter chuggers.
Butter chuggers. Yeah. I've heard that a lot, and it's funny. And also, yeah, you brought this up, but I was going to say about people stalling, and it's definitely, I agree with you. A lot of times it's nuts and cheese. It's those dairy and kind of like hyper palatable salty nuts that people really need to limit.
Yeah, you'll never get full off of nuts. You'll never get full off of cheese. You won't lose a sufficient amount of weight drinking alcohol. And so the top reasons I see are carb creep, fat creep, and alcohol and liquid calories. Those are like the top reasons for a weight loss stall. Nuts, cheese, or, they're eating a lot of berries, and there's they're doing a protein bar or keto bar or something like that. And they're just, they're putting ketchup on them, whatever. And there's a carb creep, or there's a fat creep, which is they're doing a ton of keto bombs and a ton of keto treats or keto cookies. And then they're putting butter on everything, and they're having cream with everything. And so there's the fat creep, and that's something people don't understand. Part of the diet is learning, over time, maintaining weight loss is learning to cook within a framework. Like if you kind of learn to cook within a framework so you're not feeling like you're restricted, it's going to help your diet. But that pendulum can swing so far on the other side where, like, if you're making every keto treat and keto pizza and, keto cookie, there's no way you're going to lose weight. You're just those are foods with, added sweeteners are just too palatable to limit. So, there's like this fine balance between restriction and kind of going overboard. And like to come back to satiety and restriction, another reason why carnivore maybe do good is just by restricting what you eat, you can lower what you eat by like 25%. So if you eat like one type of food, you'll eat 25% less than if you combine 2 types of food. So like if you had steak, shrimp, and mashed potatoes versus just steak alone, if you're eating the steak alone, whether it's the monotony or the nutrient density, we don't really know, but you're going to eat 25% less. So from a weight loss perspective, restriction is actually good in the short term. In the long term, I find you have to have this healthy balance of a diet that kind of just works for you and is enough for you, and it isn't making you feel like you're losing out on something.
Yeah, the sustainability is huge. And all that is working it in. You're learning about yourself and you're working it in later. It's like get to your goal weight and then let's add in the nuts and the cheese, and you can start experimenting and figure out where your homeostasis is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and definitely an individual approach. And, obesity is an N equals 1. Obesity is N equals 1.
Yeah.
Obesity and weight loss.
All right, this is awesome. Before we go, I want to get into some athletics and stuff like that, because you had a great transformation story yourself, going from 350 pounds, I think you said. And can you tell me about that?
Yeah, sure. So I'll make it super quick. So, let's kind of go back. I lost 350 pounds. No, I'm sorry. It was 350 pounds. I lost 155 pounds with a low carb ketogenic approach. And over the last year, so I never really exercised, and I didn't really, in the beginning, I just binge watched Walking Dead and some Marvel movies on my iPad as I walked on a treadmill 3 times a week in the beginning, because exercise at 350 pounds is just a disaster. It's an injury waiting to happen. It feels terrible on your joints. So when I lost like 80 pounds, then I really kind of picked up in the gym. This was after the first year. And I lost the majority of my weight in like 2.5 years. And I wanted to make a point about the fact that we don't need carbohydrates to run it or perform at a high level. So I basically trained in a 0 carb, highly fasted state. So I would fast 20 hours a day, and I would really be on a very, very low carb or 0 carb diet for at least 6 months. and I trained to run a 5K. And I ran the 5K. This was about 2 or 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. And I came in at 19 minutes, 19:01. And for a 5K, so that's like a 6:09 mile pace for 3 miles. And this is somebody who ran 1 mile in like 17 minutes just 2.5 years prior, or probably even less, 1.5 years prior. So, well, why did I do that? Well, we're always told that we need carbohydrates for muscles. We need carbohydrates for energy. We have to drink chocolate milk after exercise. And I think it's total a bunch of bullshit. You had Lane Norton on, who always talks about, Pop-Tarts and you need glucose and blah, blah, blah. And all the, bro scientists say you need carbs for brain fuel and you need carbs for energy and you need it for explosive performance. Well, how does somebody who's, if anything, genetically predisposed to diabetes and came from a lifetime of obesity go from the 99th percentile, the absolute worst in, athletic performance, to the top 1%, winning a race for his age group in a 5K? And just to put this out there, and I'm not tooting my own horn, I don't think I'm special. I think anybody can do this. You don't need carbs to exercise. You don't need carbs to, especially if you're fat adapted, you don't need carbohydrates for energy. It's just not necessary. And so not only did I win first for my age group for this 5K, I think I came in 7th for the whole race. I mean, I ran it. I was 195 pounds. Every single runner in front of me was between the weight of 130 to 160, and I'm 195 pounds. My body fat percentage is 12%. And it's not like I have a small frame. I like to lift. I'm not a runner. If you look at my frame, I'm not a runner. I bench. And so not only did I train and score in the top 1% without carbs, fasted for at least 6 months, essentially, daily fasts of 20 hours or more, my strength in my squat, bench, deadlift all went up, all went up. So you don't need carbohydrates to gain muscle. I never lost muscle mass. My muscle mass improved over this time. My fat mass decreased slightly over this time. You don't need carbs. Sorry if that's a big tangent, but you don't need any carbohydrates for athletics. And so, then we get into this debate of, what about, the Olympic lifters and the professional athletes? Do they need carbs? Well, I don't care about the 0.5% of people. I don't care about them, the superstar, insulin sensitive people. I'm saying 99.5% of people, if you want to win your county 5K, you don't need carbohydrates. Okay. You don't need carbohydrates. And I think I was the biggest underdog, and like I said, the bottom of the pack to the winning my age group.
That's so great. I love that sort of experiment too, just to prove that. And I've been kind of trying to do that as well. And I had Luis Villaseñor on. He's a giant guy, lots of muscle, very few carbs. So that's great. And I love your story. I think you kind of glossed over this, but in the very beginning, you just took a look at yourself. You didn't realize how you got so big, and you just looked at the science, right? You just went to literature and found what worked. So you didn't come to low carb because, Lane Norton says we're low carb zealots, say. You came there because you had a problem and you looked at the literature and you realized that out of all the diets, especially ad lib, which is you can eat as much as you want and not restricted, that low carb was the most effective. So yeah, just on a going out note, do you want to just talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I mean, look, when my wife kind of very gently came to me and said, look, we're pregnant with our third kid, are you going to be around, and totally in a nice way, supportive way, she came to me. I mean, the first, she basically said, you're a smart doctor. Why can't you figure this out? That really inspired me to figure it out. And so, yeah, I went to the medical literature. And if you look at every study on a free living person in an ad lib setting, low carb generally does better. And more recently, there's a newer study, Diet Fits, that potentially showed it was equal to a low fat diet. I mean, but most of the trials prior to that showed that a low carb diet was better in the ad lib setting. So yeah, I started there. This was a completely evidence-based approach, and I'm a big proponent of evidence and following as much evidence as we can and knowing the medical literature and knowing the weaknesses of it. So yeah, when I went to the data and when it was clearly supportive of, low carb diet. So yeah, it started there. It's all there. It's listed there. I mean, studies in, Ben Gurion, studies in published in New England Journal, in Annals, in JAMA, consistently have shown in head-to-head studies that low carb is better. And now just to come back, because you mentioned Lane Norton, his approach, which is, if it fits your macros and flexible dieting, there is not one head-to-head study with flexible dieting, not one. There's not one medical study that's head-to-head versus a low-fat, low-carb, paleo, whole food, plant-based, whatever. Doesn't matter. There's not one study that looks at a flexible dieting paradigm versus one of these, which have all been shown to reduce glycemia and in the literature, and reduce improve glycemia, improve diabetes, improve blood pressure, and have been tested for weight loss. So there's not one head-to-head study. So it's a complete joke to say that he's evidence-based, because he's not evidence-based. And the flexible dieting, although it may work, and I understand how it can work for some people, this is not an approach that's supported by the data.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry, but I consider it quackery. I consider it zealotry when somebody goes and promotes a diet to countless people, saying that everybody else is a zealot, especially to whole food plant-based people who there's data for whole food plant-based that it improves glycemia, it's great for weight loss. The people who promote keto, there's been data that shows it improves glycemia, it's great for weight loss, low fat even. And he's come down on all these approaches when, I'm sorry, flexible dieting has 0 trials. So I'm just putting it out there that, he's a quack.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Was that strong? Was that a little strong?
No. Well, he's kind of getting under my skin. Someone just asked a question on one of my posts that I showed about a new study that showed benefits of low carb, and he just wrote, "Oh, I debunked that on my YouTube channel. That's garbage." I was like, it's funny how everything that goes against your viewpoints is garbage when that's what you say to everyone else, right? He's doing exactly what he's telling people not to do.
Yeah, I don't want to spend any more time on him because I think he's insignificant. So let's.
All right. Well, This was great. Thank you. Let's not fat shame people. Let's embrace their different needs. And there's a lot of emotional and psychological stuff going on. And I'm sorry if I came off as offensive to anyone listening, but I think that's about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed Dr. Trill. Please support the Food Lies film by clicking through the link in the show notes or going to foodlies.org. Leave a review on your podcast app or iTunes for this podcast. It really helps. Follow along on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube by searching for Food Lies, and I'll catch you next time.